in Photoshop so that it was the same size as my painting, which you see here with a piece of plastic over it. Okay, I'll talk about that in just a second. Let's see if we do. Hello, John Myers, and hello, Ann Wall. So good to have you here. All right, so I've been working on this already quite a while today, and I think I'm ready to do this. Oh no, I'm not. So hang on. I want to take this off so I can describe this to you, show it to you. This is a pretty extreme form of photomechanical trick, right? Means for correcting a portrait, right? There's varying degrees of, if you will, intensity. Can I use that word? Degrees of help, technical, some of them are very mild, like the use of proportional dividers and so forth. Hello, Bill Reeves. You YouTube people better get on board. We have Facebook people saying hi before you. And this is actually the second time. So let me pull this off now. All right, there. Pull this nasty tape off so it doesn't get stuck on anything. Let me back up. So I want you to understand, first of all, understand that the use of any kind of photomechanical trick or device is legal, big but if you rely on it too much, your skills deteriorate, right? So I begin virtually all of my portraits just drawing, just looking and drawing. And then little by little, I incorporate more strict tricks, more technical, I'm missing a word, more ardent measures to achieve. Anyway, so after I have drawn, and I'm almost finished with him and pretty close with her, I'll zoom in to both of you for you so you can see the painting up close. Hello, Larry. Oh, good. Good to have you on board again. Larry, you're next. Larry, your portrait, quote unquote, is next, but I've got to finish one or the other. So again, I print in Photoshop, sitting at my desk, at my computer with my printer right there. I measure, I go back and forth, I run some cheap draft prints till I know that this is exactly the size as this. Do you understand? So I make this match this because this I started by just drawing. Does that make sense? All right. In fact, one of the funny little developments here is that their heads are not positioned exactly the same as they are in the photograph. That's the kind of thing that happens. Anyway, so after I have printed off this, I do several things. Number one, this is laminated. What a great trick. It was 3 or 4 years ago. I spent $150 for a laminating machine. It's turned out to be $150 of the best money I've ever spent on my painting business. For a couple of reasons. One is when you laminate, so this is a cheap, regular copy paper print. And as some of you know, an inkjet print on copy paper doesn't look very good. You with me so far? Inkjet on paper, not so good. But inkjet on ordinary paper, when laminated, all of a sudden the colors, because it's glossy now, the colors pop. So this is a lot better image than it was when it was just bare naked paper. Got that? Right. Then what this allows me to do then is take a piece, and again, this is fairly extreme photomechanical technical tricks to accomplish. All right, so just want you to understand that. Then I take a piece of plastic, acetate, and tape it down, and very carefully with a fine point Sharpie marker, I trace both of these images. Now, it turns out, well, no, I traced them exactly, I traced them the same, all right? So now I have a corrective, and let me move down to the painting now. So all I'm doing right now is teaching you guys a good trick for cheating. Hello, Pamir, and hello, Uncle 60. My Neo Miguel has never gone white, but my liquid goes purple all the time. My guess is that it's oxidized a little bit, but it's still probably okay, as long as it's still gel fluid, as long as it's not stiff. Uncle, my guess is that it's okay. I think I've sort of gotten used to mediums doing weird stuff like that, and usually it doesn't hurt. All right, so now let's just look at his face for the moment, because that's what I've done. Because I had actually worked on his face a fair amount, and in the course of working, I experienced feature drift. That is, by building up layers of color, you know, little things moved little by little. Because I'd already done this one time. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Let me back up. I already did this process once. Okay, so this is my second time, because in the course of trying to match skin tones and details, features had drifted. You know, that this part of his head had gone out about 1/8 of an inch, and so on and so on and so forth. His ear had gone up 1/8 of an inch, and so on. So this is like the second time. But I just want I want you to grasp what I'm doing here, right? In a way, it's kind of embarrassing to admit that I have to employ, you know, I wish I were good enough that I didn't have to do that. Oh, by the way, I just saw a quote unquote, another thing that needs correcting. I completely ignored it earlier. You know, it'd be fun to pretend that I'm so good that I don't need to do this kind of stuff. I think you understand that impulse, right? It's mostly a vanity impulse, but not entirely. because there is value in having true skill. And some people do have more skill than I do. Of course. I mean, I'm sorry, that statement should not have come out that way. Of course, you know that. There's people that are better than I am at this. Not a lot, but some. Right? I don't want to either be humble or arrogant. I want to be a realistic balance of myself. Anyway, so I spent a couple hours already today on him. I've spent about 30 minutes so far on her, and she's coming along quite well. So what I do, I didn't finish my description, so I tape this down so it doesn't wiggle, and then most of the time with a black pencil, I make marks where things need to be moved. So then part of the painting is I have to cover up my pencil marks, because I don't want pencil marks on a portrait. It's okay for my cityscapes, but I don't want pencil on people's faces. All right, now YouTube people are speaking up. Hello, Michael McEwen, our Scottish friend. Let me see. Oh my goodness, it's late there, isn't it? Oh, it's almost 11 o'clock. Sorry about that. Uncle. He spent $150 on a bottle of scotch. That was the best $150 I ever spent. Hello, Radina. Good to see you. Hello, Pamir. Just happened to stumble here because YouTube. Yeah, okay, well, good. Welcome. Good to have you here. And Michael's still working on the charcoal portrait of an American Civil War. That sounds exciting. Oh, good for you. Drew it just looking. And Pamir, you taught this nonstop, and I now know more about drawing. You're fun. Thank you. I appreciate that. He is all wet. His face is all wet oil paint. It's very thin, so it's not too smeared. I am not completely happy with his color yet, but I'm close enough. I can do tiny tweaks tomorrow when he's dry. All right, so let you know. Now let's go to her. There's several aspects of her face. By the way, when I did this check here, I found I was surprisingly close. I just had a few little things that needed to be tweaked. one, for instance, one of which is her ear. So so here you see me. Then now it's not taped down. I took the tape off a while ago, but I'm close enough. So again, there's a bit of a trick involved because you can't draw through the plastic. Duh, that's kind of dumb. You understand? You follow me? You can't. So you have to flip it up and then remember where you were and so on. So there's actually still, believe it or not, still a little bit of drawing skill required even when you use this. But that's a good trick, eh? And there's some pretty big dog portrait painters that employ this same trick. All right, now, hello, Melinda Dilday. Good to have you here. Okay, one more trick. I want to let me blow back up your vision a little bit. This is very important. I want you to understand this. There's a second very important benefit to laminating or painting in plastic. Now, one of my viewers said you could do the same thing by putting it in a plastic sleeve, and I think that's a pretty good idea. If you don't have a laminator, a plastic sleeve might be a good cheap solution, but as benefit to me, so I'm very happy with it. Anyway, here's the benefit. In fact, instead of me just talking about it, I'm going to demonstrate it for you. This is great for color matching. Now, I learned this from Mark Carder, C-A-R-D, D as in Dan, Carder, C-A-R-D-E-R. He is definitely a big dog portrait painter and painter. He did I believe, both George Bush and George W. Bush official presidential portraits. So that's pretty big. That's pretty big dog. Look him up. He's very generous with his information. And I learned this from him, laminate the photograph. So I'm looking at this man's name is Paul and Nancy. And I realized that there's a part here on his chin that I've got too dark. My painting is too dark, right? So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to try to match that color. Over here I'm mixing colors now. Oh, by the way, let me just pick this up. I've been painting for a couple hours, and as you can see, just a whole bunch of flesh tones, a little bit of green for the leftover from the background, and that's what I'm mixing over here. Nothing special, nothing magical in my mixing techniques or anything. And right now I'm just taking a wild guess. Now here, let me zoom in real as tight as I can here, so you can see this. Oh, in fact, I'm going to bring you guys in a little bit closer, so bear with me just a minute. You have an earthquake ride. Hang on. That might be good enough. Hang on. There we go. All right, that's a little bit better. Hello, Betty Portillo. It ought to be Portillo, right? Really, but you're welcome. Good to have you here. All right, so I've mixed up a color, just again, spitballing, shotgunning, flying off the cuff, that I think might be this color right here. Now I'm going to find out how close I am. Oh my goodness, I did not expect that. Okay, that's very close. Very, very close. The way you know it's close is if you essentially can't see your brush stroke. And it's so faintly darker than that I'm almost tempted to just let it go. But no, so I've added a tiny bit of raw umber. All right, so do you understand now that I know now that the paint on my brush is exactly the right color? So let me back up here. Hang on. My client, of course, emailed me this photograph. Well, if I was doing it myself, it'd be my photograph. But in this case, my client emailed me this photograph. And again, I spent a fair amount of time, not hours and hours, but minutes and minutes, sitting at my desk with my computer and my printer, printing off several pieces until I got the color I wanted. Okay, do you understand now? So this is nice color. I don't know if it looks nice to you on your monitor, but trust me, so that took, I didn't just take whatever color, they sent to me and use that. No, no, no. I tweaked it for a while. So that's important to know. So now I know I have that exact color on my brush. Let's now go to the painting. And I'm going to put a mark right there. Voila, as they say. Somewhere, I don't know where they say it. Now that, by the way, I often, when I have any color on my brush, I look at the photograph, I look at my painting, I said, is there any place else that I think that color shows up? And I'm going, yeah, I think it does, right over here. Now, let me just, except for that smear right there, I want you to notice that, oh, and by the way, I need to fix his eyebrows, so let me keep talking. I want you to notice the manner in which, the way, my brushmanship, the way I handle my brush. Okay, let's go back up to the photograph again, because I'm going to do the same thing again. I think I've allowed this, a little bit of his, oh boy, I'm giving you the wrong impression here, by the way. I've hit 2 colors bullseye, and that's quite unusual, but I'll take it, okay? Back to brushmanship. Please notice that when I put a color on the portrait, I put it and I leave it. The immature impulse is to blendy, is to rub it and blend it, right? At least that's my opinion, and that's Mark Carter's opinion as well. I've got one more thing to correct. Let's just keep going, and that is up here. I've got his hair coming down too far. What did I do with that acetate? Oh, I put it over here. Hang on, bear with me just a minute. Let me go get it. I discovered this just a little while ago. So let's watch me do this process one more time of color matching with acetate. First of all, let me lay this template, if you will, this template. All right, well, this is not necessarily the right color. I'm just making a mark, how high that needs to come. All right, you with me? So now I'm going to color match Paul's forehead. And by the way, I don't know how well you can see this, but the color, because this sweet, handsome couple is standing outdoors, and Paul has a receding hairline, like all good human men should have. He has the color here is purple-ish, pink, purple, and blue. Blue, lavender, and pink. And if you don't think that those colors would be hard to match, then I don't know who you are. Those colors are hard to match because your brain doesn't want to put purple paint on somebody's head. Are you with me? But right now I'm going to match this color right there. So I'm just going to not clean my brush or anything, because these are, in a sense, these are all flesh tones that I'm putting on here, right? Just various shades. Now I think that's, so I just picked up some red, naphthol crimson to be exact. Let's see how I am. Wow. Okay, I'm closer than I thought I would be. It's not a bullseye, but I'm at least only a couple ticks out. Let me do that again. Okay, what's on my brush is too orange or too yellow. So I'm going to add some permanent rose to this color. And then it's going to be too dark, so I'm going to add some titanium white as well. Now let's check. Ooh, very close. I'm just a little bit too dark. I hope you guys are seeing this. It may be that you might be catching reflection. I don't know, but because this is just really a good trick. Thank you, Mark Carter. I'm sure probably a lot of other people use it. Okay, now I'm too light. Probably a lot of other people use it too, and I just didn't know it, but I learned it from Mark Carter. So kudos to Mark. When you finish watching me, watch Mark Carter. He's a rather droll fellow. Unlike me. Oh, I don't know what anyway, I'm all over the map. He's very gentle and controlled. Some people got to be like that, you know. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't move the camera. So I just took this color that I had just matched, and now I'm really making a drawing correction, if you will. And I'm just going to leave it on both images for a while so you can watch both. Pamir says the stuff yes, a matte painting like Hollywood. You're exactly right. There is a lot of similarity there. All right, now I just did that pinkish color, but down here it's more orange flesh, and I want to paint that transition. So I'm just gonna, without cleaning my brush, because it's a very subtle shift, I'm picking up titanium white and a little bit of orange. I don't know what kind of orange. For you newcomers, I don't use cadmiums or cobalts in my paint. I don't need them, so I figure why bother? Why bother putting up with the possible hazard? Ooh, that's very close. You guys are seeing me in rare form this afternoon. I got to admit, it would be more instructive if I would miss the colors by a mile. But I'm not going to do that just for your instruction. I must have an unusually good eye this afternoon, because even for me, what am I trying to say? There we go. Okay, since I'm up here on his head, I feel like the purple lavender that's up here, I haven't got it quite purple or lavender enough. And let me go back to something I was saying a while ago, because I want to reiterate it. I want to make sure you catch it. This looks extremely blended, and in a way it is, but in another way it's not, because I've achieved each color, tiny bits of color. There's hundreds of colors on his face, and virtually every one of them has been applied in the manner that you are observing right now. That is to say, I put it down, I put the color down, and I leave it. I don't blendy, or as I like to call it, brushy. All right, so right now I'm trying to match this color. Pretty close. I'm gonna add, oh, now I'm a mile off. Okay, so what just happened, I won't show you my palette, but I tried to pick up a tiny bit of permanent rose, and my brush picked up way more than I bargained for. So all of a sudden, my little pile of paint that was very close to correct became very far from correct. And I'm sorry I'm not showing you my palette, but because I'm spending a lot of time over here. But it's good for some of you early journey painters, good for you to know that happens to everybody. Okay, there we go. Now that's off by a mile. Okay, that's way too dark. Okay? But being too dark is pretty easy to fix if that's all that's wrong with it. Because you just add, if it's just straight dark, okay, now let's, getting close, but it needs to be a little bluer. So I'm going to put some ultramarine, and now it's too dark. Do you understand? Ultramarine would make this color darker, so to add some more titanium white to it. Now let's see, I think I'm going to be pretty close this time. Ooh, very good. Okay, so that took about four tries to get it right, but I feel quite confident that I have got the correct color now on my brush. And once again, you see that I'm pretty much just putting it down and leaving it. I'm not doing a lot of shading. Now I've mixed the two colors together on my brush. I've mixed that color and that color together, and I'm blending them, not by blending this way. Now that kind of blending is okay, it's permissible. It's not like it's the unpardonable sin of painting. But Mark Carter makes the point that it's better painting if you don't do that blending, all that blendy stuff. All right, I'm done with him now. At least, done for today. Tomorrow's Sunday. I don't know if I'll paint on Sunday or not. But the next time I paint, he'll be dry, and then I can do, I'll probably do some very subtle glazing, transparent glazing on his face, probably. Be that as it may, let's come over her to lovely Nancy, and I've already worked on her somewhat. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is a good opportunity again. Let me. It sounds like I'm a Mark Carter fan. Well, guess what? I am, and he's a good painter, and not unlike myself. I hope he's a very generous teacher. Now you can pay a lot of money to get his super duper courses, but he puts tons of information online for free. Here's another tip that I learned. I think I can just go to the painting now for a bit. He says the number one mistake that, my terminology, that early journey portrait painters make is we exaggerate contrast. Oh, by the way, and speaking of contrast, this smudge of paint that's on her cheek right here, that I just put, that, okay. Now, I did some blending. That was actually some erasing. That was just a positional thing earlier. You probably weren't noticing that, but anyway, all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, don't be thinking that's a real stroke. One of the classic mistakes that early journey portrait painters make is exaggerate the contrast and make the edges too hard. Speaking of which, other than that little bit you just saw me do here on Paul's face, before that, the last thing I did before I started this broadcast was I went around and softened up. My wife came through here about 40 minutes ago, and she looked at it, and I said, and when I looked at it, so to speak, through her eyes, I went, he's too sharp. It's too sharp, isn't he? And she agreed. So I softened his eyes, softened edges, and muted a few colors, muted the colors in his eye. And as I look at it again, I need to do that even more. I need to lighten that eye, and both eyes a little bit. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm not quite too hard, quite too sharp, okay? So those are the two, did you hear that? Those are the two mistakes that immature portrait painters like myself are likely to make. Number one, exaggerating contrast, and number two, exaggerating sharpness. So I'm going to try to alleviate, besides, so I have three things to do on her face. By the way, everything that I think is pretty much in the right place. Again, there's her face, all right? And there's my painting. And I believe, having cheated, with that plastic, everything's, except for her ear, everything's in the right place. So I don't have to do any redrawing. All I have to do now is paint. There are three things I'm going to do. Color match, okay, and I already showed you how I'm going to do that. Color match, beware of exaggerated intensity, and beware of exaggerated hardness, all right? So for instance, I'm looking, I won't move the photograph, I won't move the camera, see, but the tail of this eyebrow is noticeably too sharp. I don't know if the tail is the right proper name. And by the way, I have a nice maul stick here, and I'm going to use it. So I'm color matching on her photograph, close enough. So this eyebrow, I've got it too dark. That makes sense? So I just did it with a lighter brown, and it looks better. Her other eyebrow, on the other hand, is quite dark. So let's mix up. And again, I'm picking up this brush and I'm brushing it on the acetate. I already did it, nothing to see. You know what I'm doing. Okay, so now, is that too dark? It might be, by the way, look at this. Here's a trick. I employ that quite a bit. So I don't blend with a brush too much, but I do blend with the butt end of my brush, the handle of a brush. Just to scribble, to soften, in order to soften the edges. All right, same thing, eyelashes, there we go. Periodically, I need to pick up a rag and wipe off all those little smudges that I put on that acetate. Does that make sense? That's what I just did there. Again, using my maul stick. And those of you who are regular followers of mine, you know that, I mean, the way I'm using a maul stick of all things and holding my brush in this, you know, the classic death control grip. Should I come back here? I probably should. Now I find she needs a little more fullness in this eyebrow. So, you know what, no matter how much you cheat, like I already showed you a while ago about cheating with the acetate, no matter how much you, I'm not going to use the word cheating, I'm sorry. No matter how much you use photomechanical devices, you understand what I'm saying by that? No matter how much you use tricks, I used to call it cheating and I'm trying to change my habit. You still end up having to do some drawing. All right, so there's a good hard lesson, if you will. And let me, again, for you newcomers, let me reiterate the lesson. The use of photomechanical devices and tricks, tracing, projecting, gridding, measuring, all those things, they're all perfectly legal, all right? And almost everybody through history has used them. The big but coming, but you simply need to understand that when you use those devices, your drawing skills are deteriorating, all right? So you want to use them in a measured manner, if I could use that language, okay? You want to try not to, because you want your drawing skills to, I'm assuming most people, all things being equal, would like their drawing skills to increase, not decrease, all right? And that is the reason, by the way, why I start virtually every one of my portraits by drawing. Now here's the pencil scratch again, just to soften that edge a little bit. Hang on, while I'm way up there at the top of this painting, let me go ahead and make a correction to the top edge of her head. Okay, turns out that line was too high, so I'm moving it down. Now let me do a brief instruction, because I see this mistake made so often in the early journey paintings that I encounter. So you just saw me, I just shaved off maybe 1/4 of an inch off the top of her head. Let me do it wrong. There, that's wrong. Now, what's wrong with that, you may say? What's wrong is I made my brush move parallel to the correction that I was making. I was correcting this way and I made my brush move this way. I need to make my brush move perpendicular to the correction that I'm making. Otherwise, if you do what I did the first time, and you could do it preliminary, you know, you can make one mark that way, but then, but if you do it the wrong way, you end up with a halo. You wouldn't believe how many early journey paintings I see, and there's like a portrait of somebody, and there'll be some kind of halo, either dark or light, around their head, because they did that wrong. They had to make a correction to the drawing, say for instance, had to redo the shape. And instead of making their brush go this way, they made their brush go this way. All right, that's worth the price of admission right there. If you're a new viewer, and if you're, that doesn't just pertain to portraits, it pertains to anything. If you're painting a tree and then you find out you have to make the tree skinnier, you don't fix it this way. And you can do one stroke this way to get the line, but then your other, like if you're painting sky behind the tree, am I making sense? Your brush goes this way so you don't end up with a ghost tree. I used the word halo around a head, and I'm using the word ghost. So you don't end up with a slightly different color parallel to the tree trunk. All right, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But I hope you caught that, because there's somebody out there that absolutely desperately needed to hear that, because that's a mistake I see all the time in people who are behind me on this journey of painting. All right, I think I'm ready now to, I have a habit, not necessarily a good one or a bad one. I tend to work from the top down. I am not unique in that regard. That's just kind of intuitive. Let's start matching, and I'm going to, again, I've already showed you how I do this, but since I'm going to be using it quite a bit. Hello, Richard Tardell and Raven6. Good to have you guys on board. I hope you're still here. Is his face wider in the photo, Radina asks. Barbara, good for you, out there plein air painting. I'm jealous. Is his face wider in the photo? Well, let's check, Radina. I'm not sure you were here for this part. Here is a piece of acetate that I laid on top of this photograph. And these photographs have been manipulated so that they're exactly the same size as my painting. Okay? I made my print match my painting, not the other way around. Now, if I were just tracing, I would go the other way. Anyway, I'm getting too deep. Okay, so Radina, then I slapped this on here and traced it very carefully. Sat on my butt at a desk with good lighting and a very superfine Sharpie marker. You with me? I just want to stress that's very careful. And then I came down here and I made all those corrections, and I can confidently say that his face is exactly the same width in the painting as it is in the photograph. But now it sounds like I'm contradicting you, Radina, and I am not. In fact, now that I'm doing this, I went, oh my goodness, I have a little bit of feature drift. In the course of painting, color, matching colors, his nostril up here has gotten a little wide, doggone it. That's irritating. That is irritating. And his head has gotten a little high up here. Well, that's irritating too. So I'm glad you made me do this, Radina. Let me move this around and make sure I just don't have it. Yeah, no, some off the top of his head. My goodness. All right, the point that I want to make is not to contradict Radina at all, but to say this. Most of the time when you are doing portraits and you look with your bare eye and compare it to the photograph and you say, it looks to me, like Radina just did, it looks to me like his face is wider in the photograph. Now, it could be even, Radina, it could be the angle of this, that you're seeing it at an angle. But that doesn't matter. Your point is well taken. Most of the time, when you look and you feel like something's wrong, I would say about 50, 60, or 70% of the time, it's not what you think. So what Radina may truly be seeing something that's not right. It feels to her, and Radina, I'm not blaming you. This is what I do. The same thing goes through my mind. It's like, oh man, his face looks too narrow. And 50, 60, or 70% of the time, it's not that. It's something slightly different. Does that make sense? That's a really important lesson to learn. So then how do you correct it then if you can't? Well, that's the difficulty of doing portraits, isn't it? The difficulty of doing portraits is you have to figure out, in fact, what is it that is wrong? And so there you go. Either you just keep working, and I've done this before. I did a portrait of about 10, 12 years ago. I did a portrait of myself with without it was a challenge to myself. I did it without any photography at all. I created a double mirror of myself. It's a long story. Anyway, and I just kept working and working and working and working until it was as good as I could get. And it's over there on an easel to my left. And part of the point was to experience how it feels to do a portrait in the Middle Ages when you didn't have cameras. Now, they had other devices, and they had a camera obscura and so forth. But anyway, I wanted to really feel what it felt like to do a self-portrait, and the reason it was a mirror at 90-degree angles, so it was a corrected view of my face, not a mirror image. I think all the self-portraits that Rembrandt did of himself, self-portraits of himself. That's kind of funny, isn't it? I think all of his self-portraits were just a mirror image. So we don't really know what Rembrandt looked like unless you turn his mirror on. But with that little check that I just did, because of Redina's comment, I discovered that his head is a little bit tall. So you know what? Just that right there could be what is actually wrong, is that I made the top of his head a little bit too high. Now, do you see again the direction of my brush strokes? I'm not going like this, because then you end up with a little color halo around his head. Anyway, there you go. That's all I'm going to do for now. And Redina, I will continue to look, because it's very possible. Like right now, I'm looking at this smile crease, but I'm not going to fix it. And I'm thinking I think that's a little too deep, that crease right there. And it's 1,000 things like that could be giving us the impression that his face is too wide. All right. So thanks for saying that. It forced me to go into a good instruction season. You're exactly right. That is the problem. It's with painting portraits. Portraits are so tricky. You guys get it. Uncle. Oh my goodness. Okay, for you Facebook people, Uncle says he lets Dan and Mark Carter do this trick is let Dan and Mark Carter do the portraits. There's a little bit of dried paint from the other day on her forehead, so I'm just scratching that off. All right. So the painting, my painting as it is right now, her forehead is close, but it's not dead on, to use that. So I'm mixing up a color over here that I think might be the color of her forehead. Let's see. I tell you, I am leading a charmed existence today. I'm going to have to remember this day many times in the future. And I'll say, remember that one day when I just kept getting colors exactly right first time? Man, because it's not likely to last. Anyway, so there. Wow, that was, all right. Now, is there, oh, and then up here, it goes to a slightly bluer color. Blue? That's right, because this picture was taken outdoors, underneath the sky. Right? So as you can imagine, our shiny skin takes on a slightly bluish cast when it's pointed at the sky. So once again, mixing up a color. Oh, so close. Okay, just need to be slightly lighter. Of course, it doesn't look blue at all. In fact, it looks flesh tone when it's on my palette. It's a beige, but it's blue compared to this, right? So here we go. Just put it down and leave it. Don't blend it all over the place. Makes sense, and it extends all the way over here a little bit. There we go. A little same colors right above her eyebrow, which makes sense, right? Because her eyebrow comes out. How about over here? Yeah, maybe. Okay, is there any place else? How about on the bridge of her nose? Ooh, very close. Yeah, right between her eyes. So this spot right here, watch, just a mark. Boom, that's all. How about on this cheek? Yeah, close enough. Now, sometimes I'll do what you see me doing here, which is put down a preliminary, because I've got this color already on my brushes, and I'll put down a preliminary mark just to make it my painting closer. When I come down to that part of the painting, I'll make more refined adjustments. All right, now I think, yeah, okay, now I need a little bit of pink. All right, for pink, I'm either going to add Permanent Rose, which is very pink, or Naphthol Crimson. I'm going to go with Naphthol Crimson because those are both cool reds, as opposed to Scarlet Lake, which is the other red that's on my. Let's look here. Whoops, too dark. So I picked up the Naphthol Crimson, which of course then makes this pile of paint darker, and I didn't do the second step, which is pick up some. Oh no, I've gotten off. By the way, it's also very important that the color, that the light that is on. I didn't mean to say the word color. Let me say that again. Very important that the light that's on your photograph and on your painting are identical. Okay, you can't have. This can't be off to the side somewhere. It's a little bit iffy that it's tilted, but I don't, because this is glossy. I don't think I'm losing any light up there. Okay, where am I trying to match? The top of her cheek? Oh, because I was doing parts of her face that are pointed up. That's why this time I'm going to do some Permanent Rose, which is a more purplish red. Are you done upstairs, Doug?
Ready for you to inspect.
Phew. Well, I won't do that, but I will pay you.
Put the sawhorses away and then
Okay.
to that plywood.
Thanks. I've got my buddy Doug is here again today, still making additions to our attic, getting us a lot of new storage space in our. By the way, when you see me use the handle of my brush, the mindset there is soft edges. That like it, because I'm not being precise. I'm unprecisioning. I'm anti-precisioning the painting. I'm softening edges by just messing them up with my brush handle. A little bit unconventional, I suppose. This is not right. Oh, that's an old mark. All right. Well, I'm going to pause. In fact, you know what, gang? I'm going to end this broadcast. This is a perfect place to quit, I think. If I find myself doing something, like right now, she looks horribly pale and purple, but I think it's because I don't have the warm tones in this part of her face. The pinkish, orangish tones in her face aren't in place. Be that as it may, he needs, I don't know if color correction is the right word, but after he's dry, I will color correct him, and I'll color correct both of them. At that point, so that'll probably be on Monday. Not so much trying to get a perfect copy of this photograph. Do you understand? On Monday, when this is dry, it should be exactly a color copy of this print, right? But at that point, then I say, okay, so that's accurate, but what should I do to make it beyond the photograph? You know, and I'll probably use, and it'll be very subtle, very, very, very subtle, transparent glazes to basically to warm up their faces. Okay, so that's a kind of another flesh tone lesson that maybe I'll broadcast on Monday. Okay, but instead of droning on for hours, as I often do, as you guys know. David, I'm glad to hear. Oh, back the camera a bit. You're right. Should have done that. Thank you, guys. Let me bring you down just long enough for me to say goodbye. I hope you have a great weekend, the rest of the weekend. And the eyebrow to your right is not correct on her. Anyway, be that as it may, I'll make all those corrections. Thanks. Let me look at some of your chats before I say goodbye to all you guys. Bye, Uncle. Thank you, Pamir. Good. Thanks for picking up so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. Hang on, a photorealistic illustrated comic book art. Extraordinary skill demonstrated by those guys. Extraordinary skill. And it's a form of art. It's valid. And it's fun to play with. It's like everything else. It's skillful and it's good, but you know, not for everybody. Hello, Franz. See ya.